it's at 81.
Did you say you had it here?
Okay.
How long is it going to take to roast it?
No, inshallah, not 2 hours. I'm like scared of this cord. It's been cutting out. I just leave it.
Thank you for taking your jacket off. But I think I think that was the right call.
This is a tough day to figure out. There's 30, very warm. Early 30s in the morning, and then it's going to be in the mid-70s.
So other than layers, what's the professional cameraman's answer to that?
Layers. I had 7 layers the other day. I started with 7 and ended up with just 1 with the sleeve rolled up. Lots of protests. So.
Oh, yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
So there's no extra tricks?
Nope, just layers. Lots of thin layers.
Got it. How do you do in the rain?
It's worse.
Extra layer. Extra layer, just this one plastic.
Protect the gear.
More layer.
You don't see them here, but if you were in Britain, like they have the wellies over there.
Yeah. Like, do they put them on their shoes?
No, well, when I was little, we just had boots. Plastic boots that went all the way up to their wellies.
I never had a good strategy for dealing with the rain. My strategy was just to walk.
Just get soaked.
Just get soaked. I never
get wet.
Just never.
Yeah, I had a staffer who had just started with us. We were doing a presentation in New York. She went out without an umbrella, not realizing that she was going to rain, so she got soaked. And was just so nervous because she's going to present. She's been dripping wet. So bad.
There's no good service.
I
know. I was like,
so good? No, sorry.
They were good at
Who do you think you're talking to, right?
So bad.
Fountain of horrible stories. No, I got her out of there.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad.
Forced her to go through that experience.
I'm glad that she survived that.
Not a monster, geez.
Start the live stream and then let it run for like
we'll get started in a couple seconds, but you all have your sound balances and everything okay?
Yes.
All right, give us just a couple seconds. Our last speaker is almost set.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise belongs to God, the Lord of the worlds. May peace and blessings be upon Prophet Muhammad, his family, his companions, and all of God's prophets and messengers. Good morning, assalamu alaikum. My name is Edward Ahmed Mitchell. I'm the Deputy Director of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, our nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. On behalf of the entire CAIR team, I want to thank you all for joining us and for tuning in to today's release of our 2025 Civil Rights Report, Unconstitutional Crackdowns. Today you are going to learn about the state of anti-Muslim bigotry facing the American Muslim community and the threats to not only our community, but the Constitution itself. And as you all know, the timing is remarkable because just a few days ago, a Columbia University graduate and lawful permanent resident of this country, Mahmoud Khalil, was arrested by ICE without any basis and thrown into a black hole in some ICE jail in Louisiana. This attack on him, this unconstitutional targeting of Mahmoud Khalil, is the consequence and the culmination of the abuses that have occurred over the past year, which you are going to hear about as our speakers discuss the findings of today's report, Unconstitutional Crackdowns. This madness must end, not only because of the harm it's doing to the American Muslim community, to advocates for Palestinian human rights, but because of the harm it is doing to our nation and to the Constitution of the United States. With that in mind, I want to first start by welcoming our National Executive Director, Brother Nihad Awad, to share some remarks with you today. Nihad.
Thank you, Edward. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be to you. First, I would like to thank our amazing team, Corey Saylor and Farah Hafifi, for preparing this annual Civil Rights Report on behalf of CAIR. This year's report shows the highest number of cases, complaints ever received by CAIR in its 30 years of collecting data and issuing reports on the civil rights of American Muslims. This historic level of the rise of Islamophobia is alarming. The 8,658 cases is a record number that we recognize as a danger to our civil rights and to the well-being of American Muslims. This number, 8,658, is not just about a number, it is about individuals, families, people of different ages and backgrounds who have dreams and hopes. However, all of them suffered injustice because of their opinions, expressing them in the workplace and in other places, mainly about the issue of the genocide in Gaza and the crackdown on liberation in the West Bank. So let me address this issue. I stand here today to address a pressing issue that strikes at the very heart of our democracy, the unconstitutional crackdown on free speech in the United States. This fundamental right, enshrined in the First Amendment of our Constitution, is under threat, particularly for those who dare to protest against the Israeli genocide and war crimes in Gaza and in the West Bank, and also protesting our government's unconditional support of that genocide. The First Amendment guarantees that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This cornerstone of our democracy has protected the voices of dissent, the cries for justice, and the calls for change throughout our nation's history. From the civil rights movement to the anti-war protests to opposing South African apartheid regime, Americans have exercised their right to free speech to challenge injustices and advocate for a better world. It is this very right that allows us to hold our leaders accountable and to ensure that our government remains of the people, by the people, and for the people. However, today we face a troubling reality. Recent measures have been taken to suppress protests, particularly those addressing the Israeli genocide in Gaza. These measures include arrests, surveillance, and intimidation tactics aimed at silencing voices that speak against injustices. Individuals, students like Mahmoud Khalil, and groups advocating for Palestinian rights have been disproportionately targeted, facing legal repercussions simply for exercising their constitutional rights of free speech. This crackdown not only undermines our democratic principles, but also sets a dangerous precedent for the future. The actions taken to suppress those protests are not only unconstitutional, but also deeply unethical. Silencing dissenting voices violate the very essence of our democracy and erodes the trust between the government and its citizens. By stifling free speech, we deny ourselves the opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue, to understand different perspectives, and to work towards a solution that reflects our desire to protect the values of justice and equality. It is imperative that we recognize the ethical implications of these actions and stand against them. The crackdown on free speech has far-reaching consequences for our society. It creates an environment of fear and repression, where individuals are discouraged from expressing their opinion and advocating for change. This stifling of public discourse weakens our democracy and hinders our ability to address critical issues. Moreover, the suppression of protests against the genocide in Gaza prevents us from fully understanding the complexities of the conflict and the humanitarian crisis that continues to unfold. It is through open and honest dialogue that we can hope to find solutions and work towards peace. Let me address the issue of Mahmoud Khalil in particular. We condemn the Trump administration's action against Mr. Khalil, who has not violated a single law in the United States. Abducting him in the middle of the night while taking an iftar meal during the month of Ramadan is a violation of his rights, and it is a chilling message of intimidation against all activists who are speaking against injustice. Stop terrorizing Mr. Khalil and his 8-month pregnant wife. Release him immediately and unconditionally. Mahmoud Khalil is a political prisoner whose freedom has been violated by the Trump administration. And I really wonder if Mr. President Trump, if he understands the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. We applaud the federal judge, Jesse Furman, for blocking the Trump administration from deporting Mr. Khalil. I call on all of us to stand up right and fight for free speech for all Americans. For if we fight for this right, we preserve what America means to itself and to the world, a free and democratic country that sets itself apart from other societies and other countries where dissenting views are not punished but are valued and protected. In conclusion, free speech in America is a holy and important value that keeps the foundation of our democracy intact. Any attack on free speech for one individual is a threat to all freedoms of all people in this country and around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to invite up Farah Afifi, who is the Research and Advocacy Manager, and one of the authors of the report, Unconstitutional Crackdowns.
Thank you, Edward, and thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Farah Afifi. I am the Research and Advocacy Manager at the Council on American-Islamic Relations, and I'm also the co-author of our newest 2025 Civil Rights Report, Unconstitutional Crackdowns. Today, I'd like to take you all through some of the key findings and recommendations from the report, as well as answer any questions that you all might have. The first thing I would like to show you all today is a graph of the total number of complaints that CAIR receives on a year-by-year basis. Now, as you can see, in general, the number of complaints we receive increases over time, with one very important dip in 2022. That was the first time that our offices saw a decline in the number of cases reported to CAIR offices. That decline did not last for very long, however, as in 2023, we had reported 8,061 complaints, which at the time was the highest number of complaints reported to CAIR offices across the country. In 2024, the state of American Muslim civil liberties has only gotten worse. We noted a 7% increase in the number of complaints we received, making 2024 now the highest reported year on record in our organization's 30-year history. That number is 8,658 complaints. The highest reported category was employment discrimination at 1,329 complaints. I'm going to speak about this in more detail in just a moment, but it is important to note here that this is the first time in our organization's history that employment discrimination is the highest reported category to CAIR offices. Immigration and asylum cases continue to be among the highest reported complaints as immigrants and asylees face discrimination in the government's immigration processes. Education discrimination also continues to be among the highest reported complaints, and I will speak about this more in just a moment as well. But it is worthwhile to note that this reflects what we have seen not only in late 2023, but throughout 2024, which is that students have been targeted not only by peers, not only by external individuals and organizations, but by their very universities and school systems because they are speaking out in support of Palestinian rights and against the genocide in the Gaza Strip. The last thing I would like to note on this slide is that for the second year in a row, hate crimes and hate incidents continue to be among CAIR's highest reported categories. This means that every day Muslims, Arabs, Palestinians, as well as Islamic religious and cultural institutions are targets of incidents of discrimination and hate. The next thing I would like to show you all is a breakdown of the total number of complaints we received on a month-by-month basis. As you'll see in the graph, in general, the number of complaints we received in early 2024 increased and reached a record high in May 2024. As we know, in mid-April 2024, there was the establishment of the first student-led anti-genocide encampment, or sit-in, at Columbia University. Students at over 100 universities quickly followed suit, also establishing student-led anti-genocide encampments calling for Palestinian human rights. Unfortunately, many universities overwhelmingly responded to those students, not with dialogue or an extension to discuss their concerns, but rather with police batons and arbitrary policies meant to repress free speech. We believe that we see the impact of those actions very clearly reflected here in the data. Now, I'd like to go ahead and discuss some of the key trends that are emerging from the 2024 data. The first, as I mentioned, is that employment discrimination in particular is at an all-time high. Again, this is the first time in our organization's 30-year history that employment discrimination is the most highly reported category. Previously, last year, we reported that there was a 113% increase over the previous year in employment discrimination cases. In 2024, that number has only gotten worse. We have seen an 11% increase over the previous year in the number of employment discrimination cases reported to CAIR offices. This reflects what we have seen throughout 2024, which is really an industry-wide crackdown on employees, particularly Muslim, Palestinian, Arab, and other employees who are expressing anti-genocide views. In particular, we have noted that employers who have sought to produce inclusive work cultures for all employees have refused to extend those same inclusive work cultures to Muslim, Palestinian, Arab, and other employees who seek to share identity-related speech at work. The second key trend that I'd like to note is that there is still a persistent increase in the number of education-related complaints that we are seeing. So again, last year we reported a 219% increase in the number of education-related complaints we receive. And by education-related, what I mean is both incidents of bullying and education discrimination at the K through 12 and at the level of higher education. In 2024, that number has also only gotten worse. We saw a 24% increase in the number of education-related complaints reported to our offices. And this again reflects what we have seen throughout 2024 and even up until 2 days ago when Mahmoud Khalil, a Columbia University student, was unlawfully detained by ICE agents, which is that students have been targeted not only by their fellow peers, not only by external individuals, but by university administrators, by their educators, by their instructors, and by our very own government. Our reporting throughout 2024 has noted in particular that at universities there are two key trends that we are witnessing. Number one, that universities are categorically failing at protecting Muslim, Palestinian, and Arab students from discrimination. And number two, that universities are themselves active agents in targeting their own students that they are meant to educate and mentor to be leaders in this world. One key and new trend that I'd like to highlight from the 2024 data is that we have seen a rapid increase in the number of law enforcement encounters that have been reported to our offices. So in 2023, we reported 295 complaints of law enforcement encounters. That number rose by 71.5% to 506 complaints of law enforcement encounters. It is also worthwhile to note here that 150 of those complaints, nearly a third, were reported in 1 month alone, which is May 2024. This further confirms what we believe to be true of April and especially May 2024, which is that universities who have overwhelmingly responded to their students with police batons and law enforcement have directly led to an impact and a threat to the state of American Muslim civil liberties, which we see again reflected here in the data. Finally, also emerging from our 2024 Civil Rights Report is a new data tracker of incidents targeting Islamic institutions and Islamic places of worship. We noted 40 such incidents that occurred throughout 2024. These include incidents of harassment, intimidation, vandalism, destruction, targeting Islamic places of worship. It is very clear to us that we continue to live in a time of threat to the state of American Muslim civil liberties and the ability of everyday Muslims to practice their faith in the United States. However, I do want to note a few key successes that have also emerged from the report, especially our work to continue to challenge the unconstitutional federal watch list. In March, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of CAIR 9.0, allowing our lawsuit against the federal watch list to move forward. In August, we also filed new lawsuits to challenge what appears to be the federal government's decision to use the federal watch list explicitly to target Palestinian community activists. In August, CAIR National, as well as our Los Angeles office, filed lawsuits on behalf of Osama Abu Shaid, as well as Mustafa Zaidan, two Palestinian American activists who appear to be targeted by the watch list simply for speaking up against the genocide of their people. Finally, I'd like to conclude with a few of the recommendations that are emerging from the report. Number one, we continue to urge government officials, corporate leaders, and all universities and schools to respect free speech on Palestine. Number two, we push for the Trump administration to suspend dissemination of the FBI's watch list, which the Biden administration failed to do. Number three, we urge Congress to enhance anti-doxing laws. We have seen doxing impact students, employees, and many other individuals across the country who are seeking to share peaceful speech in support of Palestinian rights. And lastly, we urge the U.S. to tie police funding to hate crime data submission so that we may better understand the challenges facing the American Muslim community. And with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation, and I would like to invite Corey Saylor, the Research and Advocacy Director, to speak on the new report as well.
Good morning. I'm Corey Saylor. I'm the Research and Advocacy Director with CAIR. I am also one of the co-authors on this new report. We appreciate you all giving us some time out of your days. If you want to sum this report up, we face hard times. At CAIR, for us, facing hard times means resilience. And resilience is not surviving hard times, it's thriving in hard times. The American tradition of targeting politically disfavored communities is alive and well. This report shows us that. President Biden gave us genocide and a wave of Islamophobia. President Trump, in his first term, gave us the Muslim ban, and we're expecting another one soon. President Obama gave us countering violent extremism programs. President Bush gave us widespread surveillance of our mosques. The Bill of Rights is bigger than all of them. We know that ducking for cover and appeasement are not viable strategies. The American tradition of protest, women engaged in protest won the vote. Workers engaged in protest ended child labor, gave us the 5-day work week. Students engaged in protest and helped America end its support for white supremacist apartheid South Africa. So we have to continue to engage in this American tradition. So what are we going to do? First of all, let me start. I said surviving is not enough. Thriving is enough. One example from CAIR. If you go back 15 years ago, we were just starting to hire attorneys for staff, and we were mostly hiring people straight out of college. Today, we have dozens of attorneys on staff, and we have some of the nation's foremost experts on the federal watch list and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act on staff. One of those attorneys won a 9-0 win in front of the Supreme Court last year. So we are going to keep defending the Bill of Rights through the lens of our community, using legal means and other traditional advocacy tactics as taught to us by others like the civil rights movement that ended Jim Crow. We have already started a campaign to call out university administrators who, instead of educating their students, are turning on them. The Unhostile Campus campaign is already showing results, both in the K through 12 level and at the university level. So we're going to continue litigating in traditional advocacy. We are going to continue our campaign on Hostile Campus, and we will soon launch, based on the data you just saw in this report, another campaign going after employers who seek to walk back the promises they made in the wake of George Floyd's 2020 murder at the hands of police. Employers who have engaged in silencing their staff from speaking about very simple things like genocide is wrong, apartheid is wrong, occupation is wrong. So we will launch a new campaign supported by a new report on that issue shortly. We appreciate you all attending our press conference today and supporting the release of this report. It is not without our community that this report gets written, because they so generously fund us, and we appreciate the interest of the media and the public at large in the experience of the American Muslim community, because the law over the last few years has shown where we go, so do your rights. If the Bill of Rights is eroded for us, it 100% will be eroded for everyone else in our nation. Thank you very much, and if we have any questions, we'll take them. And with that, our staff is available for one-on-ones after this event, and we thank everybody for giving us time out of your day and watching this. You can go to islamophobia.org if you'd like to download the report and read it. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you, Farah, for that excellent report and for your work. I want to thank all of our chapters as well for contributing to this report. CAIR has a presence in over half the country with our chapters and satellite offices, and then our national office handles any state where there is not a CAIR office. And so when you see these numbers, this is from across America. We want to encourage our community to support this work during Ramadan especially. We are counting on you so we can increase our capacity to handle these complaints that we're getting, hire more attorneys. So we encourage our community and our neighbors to support the work of CAIR by going to CAIR.com, CAIR.com. Thank you all so much. Have a great day, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
4 months of our lives, summed up in 20 minutes. Thank you very much. Sorry to do this to you all.
هلا الإدارة الجديدة إلى أي مدى تهدد هذه الشركات وبس بشكل عام لو بدك تشوف أرقام عندك أرقام ولا بتفضل حدا ثاني يحكي أرقام؟ بس بشكل عام قديش شفت الزيادة من العام الماضي بشكل عام بفكر أستاذ نهاد أهلا بك على قناة الغد. ما هي الأسباب التي أدت إلى حوادث العنف والكراهية ضد المسلمين ضد العرب وطبعا ضد الفلسطينيين في الولايات المتحدة؟